All right. So, when you think about tech investing, what usually comes to mind,
Yeah.
like probably venture capitalists, hunting for the next big unicorn startup.
Yeah, the next big thing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if I told you that's only like one side of the coin?
Interesting.
Yeah. So today we're going to challenge that assumption a bit. We're diving deep into an excerpt from Tech Investing Beyond Venture Capital. And it makes this really interesting argument that just focusing on venture capital, it's kind of like trying to win a race, but like with one hand tied behind your back,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what's this secret weapon then that everybody seems to be missing? And like how can anyone listening, whether they're, already investing or just fascinated by tech, how can they actually use this knowledge?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? So this source, it starts by pointing out something kind of obvious, but like easy to miss.
Hmm.
The biggest names in tech,
Mm.
they're already public companies.
Right.
Like we're talking Apple, Microsoft, Google. These companies are worth trillions.
Yeah.
So it really makes you wonder, why are we so focused on finding the next big thing when these giants are already out there? I mean, they're not just playing the game, they're practically writing the rule.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's like we're looking for the seed when we already have the whole forest.
Exactly.
So, how does this excerpt explain this like obsession with the next big thing?
Well, it talks about how the traditional venture capital model is like laser focused on these hidden gems in private markets,
Mhm.
hoping to hit the jackpot with the next unicorn. But what they often miss are the companies that are already leading the way in innovation. And they're doing it at a scale that startups can only dream of.
Okay, I see. So it's about recognizing the power of what's already established.
Exactly. And, speaking of innovation,
Hmm.
the source brings up AI and how the real breakthroughs in AI, they're not coming from some, hidden garage startup.
Right, right.
It's coming from public companies. Think Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI or what Alphabet's doing with DeepMind.
Yeah, those are some major players.
So it's not just about size, it's about the influence these companies have on the entire future of technology. So can you give us like some specific examples of this innovation in action? What are these companies actually doing with AI that's so groundbreaking?
Oh, absolutely. We'll take Microsoft, for example. They're integrating AI into practically every corner of their business now. Their Office suite, it's infused with AI-powered features.
Yeah.
Their Azure cloud platform that's built specifically to handle the demands of AI development. And then you have Google, their DeepMind subsidiary is responsible for some of the biggest breakthroughs in AI research from like protein folding to game playing algorithms. They've totally changed what we thought AI could do.
That's incredible. And it's not just some abstract thing either. Even if you're not an investor, all this AI stuff, it's impacting the tech we use every single day.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like we're all experiencing the ripple effects of these public companies pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, we really are. It's kind of like we're living in the future that these companies are building.
Exactly. And the source talks about this idea of capturing the full life cycle of innovation.
Hmm.
So what does that actually look like? How can we as either investors or just, tech enthusiasts shift our thinking to see beyond the hype of the next hot startup?
Well, the source breaks it down into kind of a three-stage approach. First, you have the early stage investments. That's the traditional playground for venture capitalists. They're betting on high-risk, high-reward startups, things like quantum computing or, deep tech. Then you have the growth stage.
Yeah.
These are companies getting ready for their IPOs, ready to explode onto the public market.
Yeah, like getting ready for the big leagues.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. That third stage is all about public market exposure. It's the recognition that innovation doesn't stop once a company goes public.
Right.
In fact, for a lot of these tech giants, going public is just the beginning of their most impactful innovations.
That's like we have this idea that once a company goes public, the excitement's over, like the big wins are gone. But this source is saying, hold on, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
I love that perspective.
Right. And this is where the source gets a little, well, let's say controversial.
Oh, really?
It points out that Silicon Valley investors seem to have this almost unfair advantage when it comes to public markets. So what's going on there? And how can understanding this dynamic help the average person who isn't hanging out with tech billionaires every weekend?
Well, it's true. Silicon Valley investors, they often have this much deeper understanding of the tech landscape than most. They've seen these companies grow from, scrappy startups to global giants. They've built networks, cultivated knowledge, and honestly, they have the risk appetite to play in both private and public markets.
Makes sense. But so what's the takeaway for the rest of us?
I think the key is recognizing that the people closest to the action, They see value on both sides of the tech world, right?
Mhm.
And that should make us reevaluate our assumptions about where innovation actually happens. It's not just about, the flashy startups.
Okay, so it's about shifting our mindset.
It's not about picking aside startups or public companies. It's about seeing the whole ecosystem, seeing how these different parts of the tech world interact and influence each other.
Exactly. It's like looking at the whole forest, not just the individual trees.
Yeah, perfectly put. And to really drive that point home, the source advocates for what they call a hybrid model of investing. Basically, you're putting money into both startups and established companies.
Hmm.
Can you unpack that a little bit for us? Why is this hybrid approach so important?
It's like, diversifying your portfolio, but instead of spreading your bets across different like asset classes,
Yeah.
you're strategically positioning yourself across the entire spectrum of tech innovation.
Okay, I like that.
So with the hybrid model, you can tap into that explosive growth potential of early stage startups, but you're also harnessing the more predictable, stable returns of those established tech giants.
So it's like having the best of both worlds, right?
Exactly.
You're playing offense and defense at the same time. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket, and you're recognizing that innovation, it's a constant process.
Yeah.
It's not like a one-time event.
Yeah, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Exactly. And you know what I find really interesting is how this source challenges us to think differently about those big tech companies we see every day,
Yeah.
saying, hey, these companies aren't just like sitting around. They're still innovating, they're still growing, and they're still worth paying attention to, even if they're not the shiny new toy.
I think that's so important. And it goes beyond just, investing in these companies directly. It's about understanding the trends they're driving, the technologies they're developing, and ultimately the impact they're having on the world around us. Whether we realize it or not, these companies are shaping our future. And the more we understand how they operate, the better equipped we'll be to navigate that future.
It's like understanding the currents in the ocean before you set sail.
Yeah.
So this is all very insightful, but let's get practical for a minute. What can someone who's maybe just starting to explore tech investing, someone who's always felt a bit intimidated by the whole thing, what can they actually do with this information?
Well, first and foremost, don't limit yourself to the hype cycle. Don't just chase the next unicorn. Broaden your perspective and start researching those established players in the tech space. Read their earnings reports, follow their product announcements, and really try to understand their long-term strategies.
That's great advice.
And remember, these companies are publicly traded. That means their information is out there, it's readily available. You don't need to be a venture capitalist with some, secret insider access to get a good sense of what they're up to and where they're headed.
That's such a great point. It's easy to feel like investing is this exclusive club for the wealthy or the well-connected. But with public companies, the playing field is much more level. The information is there for anyone who's willing to do a little digging.
Right. It's about democratizing access to information.
Exactly. Speaking of digging, our source mentions that Silicon Valley investors have this unique strategic advantage. Can you break that down for us? What is it about their approach that sets them apart? And how can the average person, the one who isn't attending those exclusive tech conferences, how can they learn from that?
Well, what's fascinating about Silicon Valley is that the line between private and public markets is very blurry. You have investors who are comfortable backing companies at every stage of growth, from seed funding to IPO and beyond. So they have this deep, nuanced understanding of the technology, the market dynamics, and the key players involved.
So they have like a 360-degree view.
Exactly. And that knowledge gives them a real edge. They can spot trends early on. They can identify promising companies before they hit the mainstream radar. And they can make informed decisions about when to invest and when to exit.
So they're not afraid to take risks, but they're also in for the long haul.
That's right. They understand that real value takes time to build.
So it's not just about being in the right place at the right time.
It's about cultivating the right knowledge, the right mindset.
It's about seeing those connections between the private and public markets and understanding how those two worlds influence each other.
Precisely. And that's a framework that anyone can apply regardless of, location or experience level. A good starting point is to just ask yourself, what areas of technology am I truly excited about? And then look for public companies that are pushing the boundaries in those areas. How are they approaching innovation? Who are they competing with? What are their long-term goals?
Those are great questions to ask.
The answers to those questions can give you some really incredible insight into the overall tech ecosystem, even if you never invest a single dollar.
Yeah, like you're saying that understanding how tech investing works, even at a basic level, can make you a more informed consumer, a more astute observer of the tech landscape, and frankly, a more engaged citizen in a world that's increasingly shaped by technology.
Absolutely. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and using that knowledge to make sense of the world around you.
All right, so we've talked about how the tech landscape has evolved, the importance of looking beyond venture capital, and the potential of that hybrid investment approach. But this source takes it a step further and argues that this new way of thinking about tech investing, it's the future. Do you agree with that assessment? Is this like a fundamental shift in how we should be approaching tech investments?
I think it's more of an evolution than a revolution.
Okay.
Venture capital will always have a critical role in funding that early stage innovation. But as the tech industry matures and the lines between private and public markets continue to blur, I think a more holistic approach to investing becomes increasingly important.
So it's not about abandoning the old ways entirely. It's about adapting to the new realities of the tech world.
Exactly. And that adaptation requires us to be open-minded, curious, and willing to challenge our assumptions about how the whole system works.
You know, this whole conversation reminds me of something I read recently about how the average holding period for stocks is like plummeted over the past few decades. People are so fixated on those short-term gains, quick flips, riding the hype cycle, and I think they often miss out on the long-term growth potential of companies that are truly building the future.
That's a great point. It's like the saying goes, time in the market beats timing the market. And that's especially true in tech where the pace of innovation is so rapid.
So instead of trying to predict the next hot stock or jumping on the latest bandwagon, maybe we should focus on understanding those underlying trends, identifying the companies that are well positioned to capitalize on those trends, and then having the conviction to invest for the long haul.
I couldn't agree more. It's about playing the long game, being patient, and trusting in the power of innovation to drive growth over time.
It's funny, we started this deep dive talking about how venture capital alone isn't enough anymore. But what we've really uncovered is a much bigger story about the changing nature of the tech industry itself.
It's really fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's a story about how innovation is happening everywhere, from those tiny startups to those massive corporations. It's a story about the blurring lines between private and public markets, and it's a story about the need for a new kind of investor, one who's informed, adaptable, and willing to embrace the full spectrum of technological advancement.
Beautifully put. And I think that message extends far beyond just the realm of investing. It's a message about the importance of staying curious, being open to new ideas, and recognizing that the future of technology is being shaped by forces that are much bigger than any one company, any one investor, or any one trend.
I love that. It's a reminder that we're all part of this incredible journey of technological progress.
Yeah.
And understanding how it all works can empower us to make smarter decisions, not just about our investments, but about our lives.
Yeah, it's about connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of tech investing beyond venture capital, I want to circle back to the source's core argument, that ignoring the innovation happening in public companies is a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah. It really is. And it's an opportunity that's available to everyone, not just the elite few. You don't need millions of dollars or a fancy Silicon Valley address to participate in the growth of these incredible companies.
That's right. You can buy a share of Apple, Microsoft, or Google just as easily as you can order a pizza online.
Exactly.
And by doing so, you're not just, becoming an owner of a company. You're becoming a stakeholder in the future of technology.
And that's so empowering. It means you have a voice, however small, in the decisions these companies make and the direction they take. It means you're not just a passive consumer of technology, you're an active participant in its evolution.
I love that. It's like we're all part of this giant interconnected web of innovation.
You really are.
And understanding how it all works can help us navigate it more effectively. So as we close out this episode, I want to ask you, our expert, for one final thought to leave our listeners with. What's the most important takeaway from all of this?
If I had to distill it down to one key idea, I think it would be this. Don't underestimate the power of what's already here. We often get so caught up in chasing the next shiny object that we forget about the incredible companies that are already shaping our world.
It's like we're so busy looking ahead that we trip over what's right in front of us.
Exactly. So take a look around you. The phone in your pocket, the computer on your desk, the apps you use every day, these are all products of innovation, and that innovation is ongoing.
It's happening all around us.
Exactly. So the next time you're thinking about tech investing, don't just look to the horizon, look around you, do your research, and consider the companies that are already making a difference. You might be surprised by what you find.
That's such a great point. It's like we've been so focused on searching for the future that we've forgotten to appreciate the present. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of tech investing beyond venture capital. We hope you learned something new, challenged your assumptions, and maybe even sparked a new interest in the companies that are building the future right here, right now.